webcast live via WebEx. The video will be available hopefully on the Office of Planning website shortly after this hearing. Accordingly, all those listening on WebEx or by phone will be muted during the presentation, and all those who have signed up to participate or testify will be unmuted at the appropriate time. So attendees will be called to testify in the order of when they signed up and when their request was received. Attendees who did not sign up in advance can still request to testify by messaging the host in the WebEx chat. That's the little bubble icon down at the bottom of the screen. If you're watching, please provide your full name and, if applicable, affiliation. If you haven't done so already, we'd appreciate it if you would email your testimony to jonathan.kirschenbaum@dc.gov. If you don't have a chance to do it today and you want to do it tomorrow, we'd still appreciate it if you gave you a copy. All attendees will be muted until it's their turn to testify as a participant. Organizations will be given 5 minutes to testify, and individuals will be given 3 minutes to testify. And again, I emphasize that the meeting is being recorded. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Director Trueblood, who will give us a few words of introduction.
Thank you, Jennifer. We're really excited to hold this roundtable and gather input from stakeholders today as we help the Zoning Commission refine the program for Enhanced IZ or IZ Plus and make sure that it is implementable. I'm interested to hear from you. So I just want to make the observation that this effort really grew out of 2 major engagements we did last year in 2019. First, our housing equity work looked not only at affordability challenges the district faces, but also how those affordability that affordability plays out geographically across the district. We found that it is not geographically even, that it is uneven, and it really reflects historical practices and racist practices really around land use and housing, and that those practices are not only historical, but they continue to have an impact on the way that our city works today. We continue to see segregation. We continue to see outcomes that are inequitable. And as many of you know, we continue to see divides that are only growing by race. And these outcomes include everything from income to health to education. So this was really a way of looking at some of the root causes. This report was really looking at some of the root causes, and more importantly, what we can do to dismantle some of those structural issues. The report showed that we need bold action to produce more housing, especially in areas that are high cost and have traditionally produced very little affordable housing. There were goals created for each planning area, and you can see those here. And you can see both the goal and compared to the pipeline, and you can see where the areas that need the most housing, the most affordable housing. And that is an important report that I think has guided a lot of work. But I think what also is important about that is we heard from stakeholders and residents and activists that we need to find new ways to create affordability in these areas. And enhancing inclusionary zoning was one, not all of it, but it was one critical tool for that. At the same time, or maybe just after, another important effort was going on, which was the comprehensive plan update. This underlined many of the issues found in the housing equity report, and it also provided us the opportunity to find additional areas for housing across the district, especially in high-cost, low-production areas. After years of extensive outreach, including a public review period last winter, the mayor submitted her proposal to the council this April. While there were numerous updates, and we could have a whole discussion about that, you can learn more at plandc.dc.gov. I will point out that the future land use map proposal included allowing additional density for housing along transit nodes and corridors across the district, but also in these high cost areas. We heard from stakeholders that where there are additional opportunities for this type of density, we should expect to see additional opportunities for affordability as well. And that is really the crux of IZ+, a greater percentage of housing for properties that seek to increase their residential density. We have worked to ensure that this tool, we work to ensure that the Zoning Commission has the opportunity to approve this tool by the time that the comp plan is passed, so that we don't lose ground. And it is worth noting that we're encouraging council to review and approve the comp plan this year in 2020 to ensure that we as a district do not lose ground on critical issues, not only around housing and equity, but also around things like resilience and public health. So IZ Plus is yet another tool for the district to address its housing needs, as well as its history of segregation and inequity. We look forward to hearing from you on how we can refine it to make it impactful as well as realistic. So with that, I want to thank you again for your time, and I will turn it over to Art Rogers to talk a little bit about the thought that went behind the work that we put together with the Zoning Commission.
Actually, I think we're going to go to Jonathan Kirschenbaum first to talk about the basics of the IZ program.
My apologies, Jonathan. Tell us about IZ.
Thank you. So we would like to give a brief overview of the existing IZ program, which we would like to refer to as regular IZ. Regular IZ is applicable when there is new construction of 10 dwelling units or more in most residential, commercial, and mixed-use zones. The units remain affordable as long as the development exists. IZ rental units are for households earning up to 60% MFI, and IZ ownership units are for households earning up to 80% MFI. Up to a 20% FAR bonus is given when IZ units are provided, and in some zones, height and lot occupancy adjustments are also provided. Regular IZ typically requires an affordable housing set-aside requirement between 8 and 10% of residential gross floor area. This is based on the zone the development is located in and the type of construction used. Of course, there are other factors, such as the use of bonus floor area, that can change the typical set-aside requirement, but generally speaking, the regular IZ requirement is between 8 and 10%. So today we would like to discuss with you in further detail the proposed expanded IZ concept that many of you have also heard referred to as IZ+. Expanded IZ would apply to map amendments that would allow higher density residential development. It would also apply to map amendments going from a zone that does not permit residential use to a zone that does permit residential use. The expanded IZ concept proposes to supersede the set-aside requirement of regular IZ, as we will discuss further on the next slide. All other program requirements of regular IZ are proposed to remain the same, including the bonus density of up to 20% FAR, which will be based on the maximum by right FAR permitted through the rezoning. OP does not propose that expanded IZ apply to any PUDs. Existing proposed or future PUDs would continue to be subject to the regular IZ requirements and any PUD related negotiations to provide additional IZ units. So the table in front of you shows the proposed expanded IZ set-aside requirements. So in summary, the more FAR gained through a map amendment, the higher the expanded IZ set-aside requirements. The expanded IZ set-aside percentage would be based on the increase in residential FAR resulting from being rezoned. The increase in FAR would be the difference between the maximum IZ in the new zone and the maximum by right residential FAR in the existing zone. Lots that are rezoned from PDR would have a 20% set-aside requirement because there is no existing residential density permitted. The expanded IZ set-aside requirement is proposed to apply to the entire residential density permitted under the new zone. So sort of to illustrate what this all looks like, we created two scenarios. In scenario one, the existing zone is RA2, and it is being rezoned to RA3. The increase in density gained through this map amendment would be 1.8 FAR. This is calculated by subtracting the by right 1.8 FAR in the RA2 zone from the 3.6 IZ FAR in the RA3 zone. The expanded IZ set-aside requirements would be 16%, or 6% more than what the requirement would be without the rezoning. And in scenario two, the existing zone is MU5A, and it is being rezoned to MU8. The increase in density gained through this map amendment is 2.5 FAR. This is calculated, again, by subtracting the by right 3.5 FAR in the MU5A zone from the 6.0 IZ FAR in the MU8 zone. The expanded IZ requirement would be 18% or 10% more than what the requirement would be without the rezoning. And as noted in our public roundtable notice, we will consider other expanded IZ set-aside alternatives for providing family-sized units or multi-generational units, special needs housing, deeper affordability levels, and the preservation of PDR uses. The Zoning Commission at our set-down meeting in January also asked OP to consider requiring expanded IZ to apply to zones currently exempt from regular IZ. And this concludes my part of the presentation, and I will turn it over to my colleague Art Rogers to discuss the economic analysis of expanded IZ. Thank you.
Hi, thanks, Jonathan. My name is Art Rogers. I'm the Senior Housing Planner for the DC Office of Planning. And as part of OP's analysis of expanded IZ, one step will be an economic analysis to test just what is the feasibility of increasing the affordability requirements along with increasing the density of the project. And we'll be testing a variety of different scenarios, but the goal is to test the feasibility and the productivity across all locations, not all locations, many locations in the district, and including the transition, different types of transitions in density and project types such as rental and ownership projects. We have some basic important questions that we want to answer. First, are we able to maximize the potential achieved for more affordable housing? That is, of course, the key goal of expanded IZ. But as Jonathan mentioned, we have some other goals, and Andrew mentioned as well. We have some other goals, including family-sized units, and can we support them through this process? And also, are we able to achieve the geographic equity goals that we've identified in the comprehensive plan? And then finally, we do want to make sure that this makes economic sense for our property owner. It is a discretionary process, and unlike the mandatory IZ program, where we can try to hold equal the impact on land between the affordability requirements and the bonus density, for expanded IZ to make economic sense for the property owner, there has to be something in it for them to pursue it. And that is the way that, that's part of the way that this can maximize our goal of achieving greater affordability out of the program. Can I have the next slide? So similar to the examples that Jonathan provided, we will be running, as I said, a variety of scenarios. This example that you see here tests what happens within a moderate density commercial land use category, where the zoning is being changed from the MU4 up to the MU7. And you see that the size of the project changes, and we see an increase in the number of affordable units and the percent required of the affordable units. The next step of this is to test how this affects the economics of the project. We'll be looking at how it affects the revenues of the project, how those revenues add up to the value of the project, and then what are the costs of delivering the project, the construction costs, the soft costs, what are the developer's returns that are required, and this results in a bottom line of what is the overall impact to the underlying value of the land for the property. As part of our work, we'll be sharing the economic analysis after the set-down report is filed, and then we'll continue to work with stakeholders and technical experts in the area on refining the model and making sure it tests the right things and gives us answers that we can rely on before we make our final recommendations to the Zoning Commission later in the fall. That's all I have to add, and now I'll turn it back over to Jennifer Steingasser.
Thank you, Art and Jonathan. That was really solid background. So as we work through where we get to where we are today, we still ended up with some outstanding questions that we're working on and that we are hoping to solicit some feedback from this evening. So there's these 6 questions specifically before you, as well as any that you might have that you would like to share with us, or ideas or things you think we should consider as we begin this analysis. You know, the first question is, are the set-aside requirements appropriate? Are they too high? Are they too low? Should the set-aside requirement apply to the total project, or should it be limited to the increase in density gained through the map amendment? We're also trying to focus on whether it should be applied geographically or targeted to high-cost areas or other areas of importance and significance. Should it apply to all of the zone districts, or are there some zone districts like there are today that really couldn't handle it? Is the building height that triggers the change in the set-aside requirements is something else that we're looking at. You know, right now it's at 50 feet, and it distinguishes between stick-built and steel and concrete, and we're looking at whether that's the right height for those two building codes. And finally, does it affect small projects versus large projects differently? So those are the 6 questions that are kind of framing how we are analyzing the different approaches that IZ Plus provides. But we also invite any other thoughts that you have this evening, or that if you don't have time to have them this evening, you can send them to us throughout the next few weeks. And with that, I think we're going to turn it over to and begin to hear from the roundtable participants. Juliana Jackson will call you out by name and make you a participant. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. So we'll first invite comment from Commissioner Corey Holman, speaking on behalf of ANC 6B.
Thank you. I also have a special guest with me. My name is Corey Holman, Commissioner for ANC 6B06, and these comments were approved at our meeting last night. Before we start, one thing that wasn't in the report, I just want to say we are not experts in residential development, and take no stance on any of the specific context of what expanded IZ would look like in terms of affordability, unit mix, set aside, or any of that. Where we do have a role in this process, and something that stuck out in the first couple of reports was, and I think even Ms. Steingasser mentioned it, these would apply. Expanded IZ is designed to apply to owner-initiated map amendments. ANC 6B, like many ANC communities around the community, plays an active role in planning our future growth. We are excited about Expanded IZ, particularly for a few large vacant and underused PDR sites in our commission area. In fact, in late 2019 and early 2020, ANC 6B began the process to remap the PDR land. Upon hearing about Expanded IZ, as well as a plum of that land, we paused the process to ensure any rezoning maximized the amount of affordable housing in these areas. So it's disappointing to see OP continue to assert in filings and in discussions and in commission meetings that Expanded IZ would apply only to owner-initiated rezonings. It's imperative that Expanded IZ, in whatever form, does not create 2 classes of rezonings. To be clear, ANCs are not the only other party that can file for rezonings. We just want to ensure that creating 2 classes of rezonings does not create unintended outcomes. Our second relevant comment is directly related to the exemptions of PUDs from Expanded IZ. We are, and this is not to impugn the developer, the PUD I'm going to allude to, but our recent experience going through a PUD process with an applicant continues to show that even when OP makes clear that their goal for benefits is maximizing affordable housing, when the ANC makes clear that their goal for community benefits is maximizing affordable housing, that the developer has to be dragged along to barely get above the minimum. We have the opportunity now to change the starting point for these discussions of PUDs, and therefore ANC 6B recommends Expanded IZ apply to PUDs, even if it's in a reduced amount, at least to change the starting point for discussions. And the last comment we have relates to the somewhat to the areas in which IZ does not apply. And I know Commissioner Miller mentioned this multiple times. The NC6 zone is part of ANC 6B, and we recognize one of the original purposes was to ensure that the heights and densities conformed to functionally what the historic district would, or historic preservation review board would limit, and did not offer bonus density, bonus height, but exempting IZ in these areas has led to some really weird outcomes of, pretty large buildings that have no affordable units on them, specifically on Virginia Avenue and L Street. We think there's a way to create bonus density and require IZ through lot occupancy, and it's disappointing that it wasn't. And we would encourage, either through this process or likely through another process, that all the zones that do not require IZ are reevaluated for it to include it. Thank you for dealing with my daughter, and I will take any questions you have. Thank you.
Thank you, Corey, and your daughter. I don't have any questions right now. Thank you. The way we plan to handle the comments are to take them and kind of digest them and ingest them, and then we will be responding back with a type of written digest. I know the ANC has asked for a written response, yep, and we'll be providing that to you as well. So right now, I think we're just going to continue on and get through the testimony, and then okay, do it.
Thank you.
Juliana, can you this, please?
Okay, next I will invite Cheryl Court to testify on behalf of the Coalition for Smarter Growth. I will be keeping a timer, so I'll just let you know when 5 minutes has passed.
Thank you. My name is Cheryl Court. I'm testifying on behalf of the Coalition for Smarter Growth, and we appreciate you convening this roundtable to discuss expanded inclusionary zoning. We are part of a larger group of affordable housing advocates who are supporting this proposal and have signed a joint letter that's been submitted separately. But in terms of Coalition for Smarter Growth specific testimony, we agree that it is the right time to look at new applications to inclusionary zoning. And while IZ is not perfect, we believe that it's delivered clear, tangible benefits that are really worth the effort to implement it, and has made important contributions, especially to the distribution of affordable homes across the city, including in Upper Northwest, and has built affordable homes in all 8 wards. Given the stark inequities that have been exposed and highlighted once again by the coronavirus pandemic and economic crisis, we believe that we should be using every tool possible to address a legacy of redlining, racial segregation, and discriminatory practices that have led to today's disparities in wealth, health, and housing security. And given IZ's success and DC's dire need, we agree that expanding inclusionary zoning in the rezoning process will be helpful, and that as property owners rezone their property to a zone that permits more housing, we can also benefit the public with a larger set aside of IZ units. So broadly, we support the concept. Specifically, we appreciate that the timing is helpful as we look at a draft future land use map that adds additional housing capacity in the comprehensive plan, with that now under consideration by the DC Council, and that the application of IZ to regulations to a proposed FIR formula, we support pursuing that, and we definitely appreciate that we do need to vet the financial feasibility of doing this to ensure that we're balancing public benefits with private benefits of upzoning. And we do also ask that OP consider feasibility of set-asides higher than the 20% set-aside of IZ FAR at the 2.5 FAR increase for rezoning as in the formula. Sort of why cap it there? We'd like to examine if we should go further in terms of getting more affordability for the benefit, the gain in rezoning. We do recommend creating or certainly analyzing the creation of a 50% MFI option for IZ rental units. And, that might mean we'd be shifting the proportionate set aside for the deeper affordability. And we appreciate that is a financial challenge and ask that OP thoroughly vet that question. And that likewise, office planning should also examine 3- and 4-bedroom IZ units through expanded IZ to serve larger IZ eligible households who currently are not being served today. We support expanding IZ to the PDR zones when converting to residential use. Again, we are interested in seeing the financial feasibility assessment of that. Another thing that wasn't in my testimony, we definitely think that it is helpful to apply to exempt areas now. There have been examples where an area was exempt because the original understanding was that it couldn't be upzoned, and then it was upzoned. So we definitely want to catch those so that doesn't happen again. We do think that there's particular benefit in targeting high-cost areas, but would be interested in the analysis for the entire city. The basic rationale for this position is that this is a value recapture mechanism where the public is providing something of value to a private property owner, especially with the opportunity with new housing capacity proposed in the future land use map. On the other hand, we know that we should be offsetting the value offered in that rezoning is both providing for the cost of new IZ units and also continuing to incentivize that landowner to request that rezoning because we want to see more housing built there. In addition to pursuing IZ in rezonings, we ask that Office of Planning also examine a more matter of right approach to providing affordable housing developments by utilizing the PUD level of density in a base zone, which is theoretically 40% of the base, 40% increase in FAR over the base zone. This is important because with the posture of the Court of Appeals now, with Bruce Monroe's decision in particular, we don't see that affordable housing developers are going to feel that they can take the risk to do either a PUD or even a rezoning. And so we need to provide additional incentives and ways to make it feasible to build more affordable housing in a more predictable way. So those are sort of...
Yes. I'm so sorry, Cheryl. Your 5 minutes. If you could just wrap up your sentence. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So that's so we are encouraged with the direction that Office of Planning is going in, and look forward to working with you and the Zoning Commission. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. I will now invite Caroline Petty to provide testimony. Caroline, are you available to provide testimony at this moment? Hello, Caroline, you're on the line.
Juliana,
Caroline, I just unmuted you.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Good. Well, thank you very much for this opportunity to offer comments. Let me start by offering my strong support for OP's conceptual expanded IZ idea. I've long been concerned that changes to the comprehensive plan's future land use map, that is, increases to higher categories, could presage a move away from planned unit developments and toward map amendments and matter of right development. This, in turn, would mean a lost opportunity that PUDs now offer for securing additional affordable housing and other valuable city and community benefits. I believe OP's conceptual proposal is intended to mitigate this possible effect of the FLUM changes, and as such, I support it. I believe that in a city as attractive as Washington, D.C., density is a resource, and it should never be given away without something in return. That said, I'd like to offer the following more specific comments. First, on the economic analysis. OP should take a close look at the possibility of proposing higher affordable set-asides than the ones proposed. And in the face of the uncertainty that's always attendant in economic analyses, OP should err on the side of proposing higher set-asides. In this instance, even if the set-asides turn out too high, developers still have choices. They can develop through a PUD process, they can still develop through matter of right under existing zoning, and with showing that compliance will deny economically viable use of their land, they can even apply for a variance from the set-aside requirement. Regarding other expanded IZ concepts for discussion, family-sized units, multi-generational housing, units for persons with special needs, I strongly support. Deeper affordability, strongly support. Applying to IZ to zones currently exempt, strongly support. With regard to expanded IZ in PDR zones, I support this, but everybody knows there's a strong interest in preserving scarce and ever-dwindling PDR. The Zoning Commission will have to weigh PDR's rezoning requests very carefully, but that'll be nothing new. There are competing interests throughout the comp plan, and it's up to the Zoning Commission to sort them out. The case for residential rezoning may be stronger at PDR locations close to transit hubs or in conflict with nearby land uses. I just want to end with a general comment about this proposal. OP's proposed concept to expand IZ is responding first to an anticipated increase in requests for zoning map amendments, and second, a possible decrease in PUD requests and the corresponding opportunity to secure additional affordable housing. While I support expanding IZ to the extent feasible, I would not want to see this process bogged down and become a multi-year paralysis by analysis while map amendments and matter of right development continue apace. If that happens, we will lose the affordability benefit offered by the expanded IZ proposal.
Thank you so much, Caroline.
Thank you.
Next, we will hear from Patrick McEnany with Somerset Development Company.
Hello, everyone. My name is Patrick McEnany. I'm representing Somerset. We are a mission-driven, for-profit developer that specializes in the preservation and production of affordable and mixed-income housing here in the district. We have submitted a joint letter as a member of the DC Housing Priorities Coalition, but would like to add a few additional comments specific to our organization. As a Ward 3-based affordable housing developer, we are strongly supportive of the Mayor's goal to add 1,990 affordable units to the Rock Creek West planning area in order to reduce historical patterns of segregation and provide greater access to opportunity for low and moderate income families. As such, we're in favor of OP's draft amendments to the comprehensive plan, specifically the proposed changes to the future land use map that provide additional development capacity to help achieve this goal. However, to ensure that these land use changes effectively produce a large number of affordable units, any future revisions to the zoning map based on the updated comp plan must require significantly higher affordability thresholds than the district's standard IZ policy. Otherwise, providing additional development capacity by increasing allowable height and density will merely drive up the value of land in Ward 3 and make it harder to finance affordable housing projects. We are thus very supportive of the concept of expanded IZ, which will help to ensure that as much increased land value as possible is captured by the public and invested in affordable housing production. In addition to supporting expanded IZ as a broad concept, We strongly encourage the Office of Planning to adopt a second complementary tool to expand the production of affordable housing across the district, a matter of right bonus density incentive for projects that meet a minimum threshold of affordable units. Right now, given the significant risks and costs of discretionary upzoning processes, affordable housing developers are staying away from these projects. The recent DC Court of Appeals decision in the case of the Park Morton public housing redevelopment has confirmed for us that even affordable housing projects are at high risk of legal challenges to approved map amendments or planned unit developments. Affordable housing projects operate with very thin margins and complex financing and timing requirements, and thus face especially high risk from delays during discretionary zoning change processes. As a result, all the affordable housing projects we are currently working on in the district are being done as a matter of right. Until there's a non-discretionary review process where a certain level of bonus height and FAR is provided automatically in exchange for reaching a certain affordability threshold, perhaps 20%, we are not likely to pursue any projects that require further zoning changes. Finally, we recognize that further financial modeling will be necessary to evaluate the sliding scale of affordability proposed in the expanded IZ report. We're happy to participate in this process to provide input and data, as a detailed and accurate financial feasibility analysis will be crucial to ensuring the long-term effectiveness of this program. We look forward to participating in further discussions about this proposal as it moves forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. We'll next invite Kirby Vining to provide testimony on behalf of the Committee of 100.
Am I audible?
Yes, Kirby, you are.
Thank you. I'm Kirby Vining, Chair of the Committee of 100 on the Federal City. We appreciate the opportunity to share our views on the DC Office of Planning's recommendations to the Zoning Commission that would amend the Inclusionary Zoning Program regulations. We strongly oppose the limited scope of this proposal and the effect it would have on piecemealing IZ program policy. First, the IZ program was created in an atmosphere of caution and strong reservation that requiring private development to create even small amounts of affordable housing would kill momentum and send developers to other jurisdictions. That didn't happen, and in fact, the reverse happened. The bonus densities awarded were an enticing carrot, and the affordable housing requirements weren't much of a stick. By 2016, the Zoning Commission decided that offering lower cost housing to people earning up to 80% MFI was not fulfilling its intention to produce private market housing affordable to people who could not afford market rate housing. That was the last time the IZ program was comprehensively assessed. It's time to do it again. OP clearly does not want to evaluate this program, but is anxious to keep making adjustments that resound favorably with developers at the expense of providing low-cost housing. The current proposal attempts to make map amendment approvals automatic. Any application to increase the density on a residential development, whether it involves one lot or multiple lots, would have its IZ contribution predetermined, and that contribution is based on the assumption that the current 8 to 10% set aside is still supportable. It is not. The IZ program has produced very little affordable housing while tens of thousands of market rate units have been built. The majority of affordable units created are still going to people earning up to 80% MFI, according to the most recent annual IZ report. While the private housing market is not going to solve the district's affordable housing deficit, it can do much more based on the bonuses it is receiving. We find it ironic that the proposed expanded IZ program would not apply to PUDs. One would think that these large developments would be the first place to expect more inclusionary zoning. Also, we can do more to avoid rampant gentrification and displacement, frequently involving developments that are out of character with established neighborhoods, that has been documented in the areas of the city where housing development has flourished. But the IZ program won't accomplish its intended goals without direction and guidance from the Zoning Commission through IZ program regulation and PUD deliberations. The second part of the OP proposal concerns rezoning PDR designated land to residential zone use. This proposal is terribly short-sighted. The district relies on PDR land. In fact, OP states in its amendments to the land use element of the comprehensive plan that PDR land cannot be decreased, and that it is providing badly needed jobs that pay better than retail and that hold promise of positive mobility. Yet this proposal rests on transforming these parcels into residential use. While there is surely an important discussion to be had on transforming these parcels into residential use and into making PDR uses in land safe and compatible with surrounding land uses, The Zoning Commission should not be encouraging the transformation of this land until the DC Council decides during its comprehensive plan debate how it wants this land to be used and regulated. The fact that these proposed changes are for map amendments also precludes a contested case where the community could argue the specific benefits or harms of a particular proposal. It's time for the Zoning Commission to take a hard look at the IZ program and not be dissuaded from making significant changes as it was persuaded by DEMPED, the director of DHCD, and OP in 2016. Continuing the exemption of most of central Washington from IZ requirements resulted in a significant lost opportunity to create affordable housing. The requirement that IZ units not exceed the proportion of comparable market rate units resulted in no affordable family housing being created and the inventory of affordable units limited to studios and one bedrooms because that is what the higher income people wanted. We know more than we did in 2016 and in 2009 when the IZ program was adopted about the effects of affordable housing crisis and how the IZ program has interfaced with the city's housing needs. The expanded IZ program is being thrust upon the city by the Office of Planning with insufficient development justification. The OP has released no material on the program since its release on January 3rd, and the promised financial and economic impact assessments and analysis have not been seen. Other than Committee of 100, no organization or individual submitted comments to the ZC case file for this case. In summary, this proposal should be shelved, but the discussion should be expanded to make fundamental changes to the IZ program. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kirby. We'll next hear from Alex Baca on behalf of Greater Washington.
Hi. Am I on?
Yes.
Thanks everyone so much for hosting this today. I'm just going to read through our comments that we submitted in writing. Hopefully it won't take too much of your time. Greater Washington supports the legalization of increased residential density in Washington, D.C. I think that is fairly clear. We especially favor new denser housing and new affordable housing in affluent, high amenity neighborhoods such as Rock Creek East, Rock Creek West, and near Northwest, largely because they have not historically seen the construction of new affordable housing. We know the link between density and affordability is sometimes difficult to grasp in theory and often invisible in practice. But we also know that the district has not added the housing that it needs to meet the pace of population and job growth in the region. More housing, more affordable housing is not the sole solution, but without it, there's not really a chance to make housing more affordable. And we also know that the law of supply and demand mean very little to people who are not professionally engaged in development politics. To longtime residents or service workers or multi-generational households, the sort of seeming impossibility of finding safe and accessible and adequate housing makes new development look more like a threat rather than assault. By requiring more affordable units and projects seeking a greater density than what's allowed by current zoning, the link between density and affordability is to be more literal. Affordable units explicitly benefit the district residents for whom new market rate housing is out of reach. Therefore, IC Plus is a worthwhile policy that addresses some of the political sticking points of large-scale developments because it delivers more affordable units to district residents. It also, like the district's existing inclusionary zoning policy, encourages integration in neighborhoods that, if not for the construction of more denser housing and more affordable housing, will remain racially and economically segregated. Operationalizing IZ Plus should be done delicately and realistically. We acknowledge that projects that exceed existing zone density, like map amendments, can make the district's housing stock more affordable by increasing the number of available units overall, even if the percentage of affordable units in a given project stays the same. Increasing the set aside of affordable units captures more of the increasing value enabled by changes. Given the constantly shifting nature of development economics, IZ Plus will likely require regular fine-tuning. I think you're hearing that from a number of folks today, and it's something that we certainly agree with. And we would also add, though, that no development at all under the guise of all new development meeting certain requirements may be the preferred outcome for some parties, but it isn't for us. We view inclusionary zoning as foremost an integrationist policy, more so than an affordable housing policy. But if the goal of IZ Plus is to produce more affordable units, IZ Plus shouldn't hold back the production of housing. We support comments from the Housing Priorities Coalition and as well as Summer Development. Matter of bonus density is really important. I would really hope that we can explore that as a policy next. I think that complements us considerably, and so I hope that's sort of the next step for this. And I would like to second some of Corey Holman's comments about how this would work in specific projects, especially PUDs. But I would like to emphasize once again that we see this more as an integrationist sort of effort to expand who has access to housing units in certain neighborhoods and are not at all expecting it to solve our affordable housing problems. So that's not our expectation here. So thank you all for your time. This is a good proposal. We're looking forward to it moving forward, and I think it's an important suite in our tools. Tool in our suite. I said that wrong. Anyway, thanks everybody.
Thank you so much, Alex. We'll next hear from Layla Jackson Baddies on behalf of Ward 7 Economic Development Advisory Committee. You'll just bear with me for one moment while I give Layla access. I'm having some difficulty. Layla, I do see that you are on the line. I'm having some difficulty adding you as a panelist. If you're having trouble, could you send me a message? And in the meantime, we'll move on to Jamie Weinbaum from Mid-City.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. My name is Jamie Weinbaum. I'm an Executive Vice President at Mid-City Development, a local real estate developer specializing in affordable and mixed income housing. We have a significant portfolio of district properties and are very interested in how expanded IZ could work. We strongly support Mayor Bowser's ambitious housing production goals and want to do our part to add needed housing units in the city. The reason for my testimony today is twofold. First, I highly recommend that before implementing any expansion of the inclusionary zoning requirements, it's necessary to undertake a detailed financial feasibility analysis. If the proposed enhanced affordability rules make it infeasible for a project to pencil for owners and investors and lenders, then the developer simply won't pursue a standalone map amendment. Is the proposal being discussed today meant to effectively eliminate pursuing this form of zoning relief? I assume not, in which case these percentages need to be really carefully analyzed. I know some of the folks providing public testimony today asked for higher affordability set-asides with comments that developers will simply figure it out. If the goal is to support the mayor's production goals, we need to be collectively really careful about shifting the burden to the development community as a stick. If the projects requiring zoning relief to achieve additional density are non-investable or financeable, developers are either going to pursue a lower density by right plan or not develop at all, which would work counter to the laudable goals of adding housing. And this brings me to my second recommendation, which is that the Office of Planning consider whether there should be sub-market specific IZ requirements. In a sub-market that can command higher rents, it's possible that that enhanced affordability requirements may be able to be managed based on the overall rents the project can demand. However, in transitional neighborhoods that command lower rents, the burden of enhanced IZ may again make it infeasible. That said, in higher rent submarkets, the rent lost on those IZ units is also more severe. So it is a balance that must be undertaken for this to work. Finally, before I wrap up, I want to respond to a comment made earlier in the public testimony about expanded IZ applying to PUDs. As you know, the purpose of a PUD is for the Zoning Commission to weigh the benefits and opportunities created by a proposed new project and to demand a higher level of design and other benefits and amenities and proffers. To mandate an across-the-board higher affordable housing requirement would remove the autonomy afforded to the Zoning Commission and would again potentially make a project financially infeasible, which could thwart future PUDs from being filed in the first place and future housing from being built. I look forward to being part of the process as it moves forward and appreciate you allowing me the opportunity to weigh in. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. I was able to get Layla on the line. Layla is from the Ward 7 Economic Development Advisory Committee.
I'm here. Hold on. Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Lila Batiste, and I'm providing these comments on behalf of the Ward 7 Economic Development Advisory Council, of which I'm a member. The Ward 7 Economic Development Advisory Council, or EDAC, was established in January 2018 by Council Member Vincent C. Gregg, comprised of professionals with significant experience, demonstrated leadership and skill in development, urban planning, and business. The aim of the EDAC is to provide the foundational vision work, overall strategy, and planning to bring long-awaited economic development to Ward 7. The other members of the Ward 7 EDAC are Warren Williams of the Warrington Group, Sandy Wilkes of the Wilkes Company, Pedro Alfonso with Dynamic Concepts, Bill Alsop with Hines, David Alvarenga with Liberty Tax, Tom Brown with Civitas Real Estate Services, Tom Gallagher of E&G Group, Jair Lynch of the Jair Lynch Real Estate Partners, Jody McLean with Edens, Chris Smith of W.C. Smith Company, and Robin Ziegler of Cedar Realty Trust. The EDAC applauds the Office of Planning for its steadfast commitment to addressing the need for more affordable housing in the district. However, in this instance, we oppose IZ Plus for rezoning applications in areas south and east of the Anacostia River because these areas suffer from having, over generations, a disproportionate share of the district's affordable housing. These areas fall within the far southeast and southwest and the far northeast and southeast planning areas of the Housing Equity Report. For each of these planning areas, the affordable housing pipeline is substantially greater than the affordable housing production goals. In the far southeast and southwest planning area, the goal is 1,120 affordable units, and there are 1,450 affordable units in the pipeline, a surplus of 330 units. In the far northeast and southeast planning area, the goal is 490 affordable units, and there are 1,290 affordable units in the pipeline, a surplus of 800 units. Overall, there are 1,130 more affordable units in the pipeline than the goal, which is equal to a surplus of 70%. The concentration of affordable housing in these areas of the district is the result of long-term discriminatory housing policies and laws and systemic racial inequality. Also contributing to the surplus is the fact that several newer developments approved in these areas are 100% affordable. For example, the Deanwood PUD approved in 2015 was 100% affordable with 150 dwelling units. Progressive National Baptist Convention, the PUD was approved in 2017, had 100 units, all of which were affordable. The Strand Theater PUD approved in 2018 had 86 new units, all of which were affordable. And the Deanwood Town Center approved in 2018 had 183 units. Only 18 of those are market rate units. And for all of the projects that I just named, they all provided replacement units for Lincoln Heights and Richardson dwellings. In addition to the surplus of affordable housing, IZ Plus should not apply to these planning areas because doing so is contrary to the efforts to spur economic development and growth in this part of the district. The proposed future land use map thoughtfully includes several amendments to a number of underutilized and blighted sites along Ward 7's primary corridors and at its major intersections. The land use amendments were intended to promote a mix of uses that would increase the housing supply, including the number of market rate and middle income units, as well as enhance opportunities for higher quality retail and neighborhood services for the residents of Ward 7. In order to implement the FLUM amendments, many of the subject parcels would need to be rezoned, which conceivably would trigger IZ+. Given the market realities, practically speaking, IZ+ would disincentivize developers to pursue mixed income, market rate, and middle income housing in the areas south and east of the Anacostia. Instead, developers would continue to limit the type of development in these areas to fully or highly subsidized projects or to continue to forego investment altogether. Instead of mandating more affordable units, the Ward 7 EDAC encourages the Office of Planning to consider other approaches for new development in this part of the district that furthers the policies and objectives of the comp plan, including but not limited to the support for or the provision of retail and commercial uses. The set-down report for IZ Plus notes the importance of affordable housing throughout the city. It is with that important objective in mind that the Ward 7 EDAC offers these comments against having IZ Plus applied to rezoning applications in the areas south and east of the Anacostia. To have it apply would only further concentrate affordable housing in these areas of the district, instead of affording them, these areas, the same opportunities for economic development enjoyed by emerging neighborhoods in other areas of the district. The Ward 7 EDAC requests that IZ continue as it presently is, or as it is presently, or the IZ Plus concept be refined to take these factors into consideration. Thank you.
Layla, thank you so much. The next person on our list to testify is Aristotle Teresa with Stoop Law. I'm not seeing Aristotle on the line. If you are on the line, if you could please send me a chat if you're in teleconference. We will keep moving to the next person on the list, Commissioner Frederica Kramer with ANC 60.
John Gasser and can you hear me?
Commissioner Kramer, we can hear you.
Okay, fine. I'm Frederica Kramer, Commissioner for ANC 6005 at a duly noted meeting July 13th with a quorum present. ANC 60 voted to authorize Chair Gail Fass and myself to testify on their behalf on the proposed expanded IZ. I don't think Commissioner Fass is on the line because she had another appointment later, but I'm not sure. Our testimony certifies that ANC 60's general support for the concept to expand inclusionary zoning, with caveats based on our continuing concern around the crisis in affordable housing, especially in communities like ANC 60, which is under intense redevelopment, making affordable housing a shrinking portion of the whole. We acknowledge Mayor Bowser's commitment to 36,000 new housing units by 2025, with 12,000 affordable to low-income households, and our efforts to increase the Housing Production Trust Fund until the pandemic forced some retrenchment. But we have few other effective tools to fully redress the crisis and maintain the demographic mix we need to make our city strong as well as equitable. IZ is one, but the current law is weak. A mere 792 units were produced between 2011 and 2018 in a city exploding in redevelopment. The number of units to which IZ applied was still fewer than 30 in each of the highest 3 years of IZ operating. Other localities such as New York City have already ramped up their IZ to at least 20% generally when granting density bonuses as an aggressive response to an affordable housing crisis happening in large cities nationwide. The IZ Plus proposal is a much needed start but must go further. The OP step-down requirement, page 3, says our community, Lower Anacostia Waterfront and near Southwest, is on track to meet production goals. We are not on track. Southwest is undergoing the largest redevelopment in the city, with population expected to nearly double in the next decade, including 6,200 units in Buzzard Point alone. The stated goal of 910 will make hardly a dent. The 1,048 units are about to come online in Buzzard Point were all a matter of right, and will have a laughable 30 affordable units in total. The fate of most public and other low-income housing is uncertain or worse. Inclusionary zoning can have two objectives: to increase the numbers of affordable housing units and to increase income and racial integration. If the city understands the value of racial and social diversity, as Southwest absolutely does, IZ becomes a critical tool for creating a housing stock that supports diversity. As others before me have said, redevelopment is adding few family-sized units to the studios and 1- and 2-bedroom units that dominate new construction. OP suggests considering incentives for family-sized units, but doesn't include it in their proposal. We struggle to get developers to include more larger units in their projects. When they do, they're typically higher-cost ones that don't contribute to sustained demographic diversity. The other social cost of smaller units is a less stable community. As singles become couples and couples become families, the lack of options in housing makes it less likely that households will stay in the community, in the local schools, and contribute to the governance and social fabric of the community. Citywide, IZ has produced only 92 3-bedroom and 22 4-bedroom units as of DCHA's post yesterday. OP suggests incentivizing income caps at 50% of AMI, but doesn't include these lower thresholds in the proposal. We need to see a calculus, which sounds like others have said, of the number of units that might be produced at a full range of AMI thresholds and how that would affect the cost of units at the higher end to pay for the subsidy. The sliding scale to gradually push new development toward a 20% below market rate component may do little to reverse the current course. With new development remaking the city's density, minimal and gradual increases of IZ will still make market rate units dominate, and given the likely slowdown of development because of the pandemic and the economy, have a diluted effect on generating more affordable housing. OP's proposal to explicitly exclude PUDs argues that IZ increases would be negotiated as part of a benefits package. Most CBAs are negotiated at the grassroots level, which requires AMCs like ours to be the driving force behind increasing affordability. Some AMCs lack the negotiating skills to ensure that their projects include additional IZ units. Further, most redevelopment projects in Southwest so far have been PUDs. As density increases from often 12 to 13-story buildings replacing low-rise developments, the current 8 to 10% below market rate requirement means that low and moderate income households are becoming an increasingly smaller fraction of the whole, effectively erasing social and racial diversity. The proposal considers preserving PDR uses in areas that may be only partially redeveloped residential. This is an intriguing suggestion, since one of the negative effects of redevelopment can be sanitizing the texture and energy that comes from mixed functions that add character and interest in great cities. So we support in general the intent of the proposed amendments, but have offered reasons to go further as OP and the Zoning Commission seeks to address the need for increasing affordable housing in the district. Minimizing affordability means most redevelopment is out of reach for teachers, firefighters, others at moderate income levels, and completely out of reach for lower income individuals who are losing their homes to gentrification. That's the calculus that needs to accompany this proposal. ANC 60 requires that its comments be given great weight under district law, and I thank you for the time and await further discussion on this very important proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Kramer. Commissioner Fast was also registered to speak, but had to leave the meeting.
I think because of the time she had to go, so I think she was not on this. But it's a proposal. I mean, it's a testimony from the whole commission. Thank you.
We'll next invite testimony from Adam Kent on behalf of LISC.
Thank you. My name is Adam Kent, and I'm the Deputy Director of the DC office of LISC, which stands for the Local Initiative Support Corporation. We've been working in DC neighborhoods since 1982, investing in over 13,000 affordable homes and healthcare clinics, community centers, and retail all across DC. I wanted to thank the Office of Planning for convening this public roundtable to discuss the concept of DC's inclusionary zoning requirements to certain zoning map amendments. We are a member of the DC Housing Priorities Coalition, which was referenced a couple of times in other people's testimony. And we have signed on to the joint letter in support of an expanded IZ approach. In addition to those recommendations and those letters, I did want to add a couple of things. I think first, we recommend, from our reading of the 3-pager that was released in advance of this roundtable, we recommend considering the full amount of added density in a rezoning when determining an affordable set-aside. In our read of the current notice, the table caps the set-aside requirement at 20% for all rezonings, providing a FAR increase greater than 2.5. We believe, however, that all of the additional value created via density bonus should be taken into consideration when determining an appropriate level of affordable set-asides. I provided an example in my written testimony. I won't go through it here, but I did break out a potential example which basically demonstrated a significant density increase. The way we currently read the notice, the set-aside is really capped at 20%. We understand that much more economic analysis will go into determining the appropriate percentages, but we encourage the Office of Planning to consider the total gain in FAR and not cap it at 2.5. And then the second kind of comment that we wanted to add is, we do understand that further modeling and exploration is necessary to evaluate the feasibility of an expanded IZ proposal and the corresponding set-aside requirements for affordable housing. We recommend considering various financing tools that exist for both market rate and affordable housing development, and their respective limitations and requirements. For instance, we do a lot of work in the affordable housing field, particularly with the low-income housing tax credit program. And speaking to my colleagues on that side of the shop, a 20% affordable housing project does not attract a lot of low-income housing tax credit investors. So just considering the different financing tools that are available when modeling out this expanded IZ approach, we recommend doing that. We also recommend, and I'm sure you all are doing this anyway, but running multiple test cases under an expanded IZ scenario, looking at previous projects that have received map amendments to determine and flesh out feasibility and the proper weighting of the public benefits that are being provided in exchange for the additional density. And we also support the Office of Planning looking into family-sized affordable units and the other areas of exploration that were outlined previously by the Office of Planning in terms of further study. So thank you for your time and for making this public roundtable possible.
Thank you, Adam. Next, we'll invite Jeff Utz, speaking on behalf of the District of Columbia Building Industry Association.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Good evening. My name is Jeff Utz. I'm a land use attorney at Goulston and Storrs, but I'm appearing today on behalf of the DC Building Industry Association, aka DCBIA, as a board member and also the co-chair of the Public Policy Committee. We really greatly appreciate the opportunity to participate this afternoon and just this dialogue generally. First, a word about DCBIA. Folks might know already, but DCBIA represents over 450 organizations, thousands of real estate professionals in the district, in the larger area. The members are comprised of professionals in all areas of development, so builders, developers, contractors, attorneys, and other folks. DCBIA is supportive of the enhancement of the affordable housing in the district, and we're supportive of the concept of expanded IZ, subject to some of the comments I'll make today and just some of the details that are going to be precipitating out of the process. DCBIA is also supportive of the mayor's goal to construct 36,000 units, with 12,000 of those units as affordable by 2025. In fact, we're eagerly awaiting the implementation of the comprehensive plan amendment that we believe will activate a multitude of projects to assist with achieving these goals. Enhanced IZ is a well-timed action to play an important part in the efforts to make that development more inclusive and broad-based, including geographically distributing new units, new affordable units, and new opportunities where they have traditionally not gone, which is an important theme that's been discussed a bit on the call today. While our membership and our working groups are still reviewing and assessing the impacts of expanded IZ, the primary focus, or maybe better labeled as a concern, so far is to ensure that the degree of the additional IZ set aside required through expanded IZ would not force owners and developers to not pursue map amendments. We want to make sure that the percentages of the set-asides themselves don't extinguish this as a tool, particularly after all the work and time that has gone into the comprehensive plan amendment and the future land use map and generalized policy map amendments as well. So said another way, we really want to understand the financial impacts about moving towards expanded IZ. We'll be able to make more specific comments once the financial models and the proposed text are promulgated, and we're happy to help craft those models as well, and I know some of that is already being done. More to the details of the expanded IZ, DCBA wants to ensure that the expanded IZ concept balances the 5 core components of inclusionary zoning that were set out in 0433G, the minimum percentage of the set-aside, but also target MFI, compensating bonus density, housing costs, and the administrative process. All 5 are kind of essential to work together. Getting to our more specific comments, we would recommend incorporating a consideration of where expanded IZ is applicable, which is a theme that has been discussed this evening already. This could mean tailoring the concept to apply expanded IZ to areas that achieve certain metrics like higher area median income or other similar measures. We think that it will drive more affordable housing to the specific parts of the city that are identified as deficient in the Mayor's Housing Equity Report, since the market rate units will allow for a more robust delivery of affordable units. And that concept could be attacked a few different ways, whether it's by ward, comp plan area, ANC, census tract, or just a number of different measures. We would also recommend exempting sites controlled by land disposition and development agreements with the district or with other government programs, since they would already be subject likely to alternative, robust, affordable requirements. Also, DCBA recommends further review of alternative methods of calculating the expanded IZ set-aside percentages themselves. One particular alternative that resonated with the membership would be what we have been calling the apples-to-apples approach, where the baseline starting point density would be the existing permissible density, including the 20% IZ bonus density that exists on residential sites or commercial sites, rather than the current proposal in the report that came out in January that would take the existing baseline density without the bonus density permissible today through IZ itself. Another alternative method would be to calculate what we're calling a blended approach, where the existing IZ set-aside requirements apply to the existing FAR, and then the expanded IZ percentages would apply to the density increase through the map amendment. Again, the theme here is a concern that the current proposal could be too onerous without further financial analysis, so we would like to pursue and study these other alternative formulas. DCBIA also supports the concept of incorporating other mitigating considerations into the calculations of the set-asides, those being the provision of family-sized units, special housing, deeper affordability, and the preservation of PDR uses, among other ideas. Other concepts that we'd like to track throughout the discussion are consideration of adding additional incentives, whether those are within or outside of zoning. We think those are important to add into the discussion, going back to the kind of 5 pillars of IZ that I referenced before. And then also focusing on the execution of the process, the administrative process that potentially needs to be enhanced to hopefully receive an increase in supply of affordable units that will result from all this effort that's going into comprehensive plan and expanded IZ itself. So in conclusion, DCBIA appreciates the opportunity to be involved in today's discussion. We support the enhanced IZ concept and the making more robust the ability to deliver affordable housing and housing generally with some further effort around the elements I've talked about today. We really look forward to engaging OP further and assisting in reviewing the financial models and the text once it's ready. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. I see that Aristotle Teresa, who was previously registered to speak from Stoop Law, is on the line. So we will hear from Aristotle next.
Yes. Hello?
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you're on the line.
Okay. Great. Thank you. So I only have a couple comments. I guess, I like the idea. Well, first, let me introduce myself. My name is Ari Teresa, and I'm from Stoop Law. I'm a land use attorney. But I have a couple concerns with the rule as it's proposed. And one is the idea that if the development or the proposed expanded IZ does not apply to areas that are currently low density, and so they wouldn't go from low density to high density. And so that concern is kind of coupled with the other concern, which is that if the exclusionary or the expanded IZ should be applied to PDR zones, and if it's in a PDR zone, that it will automatically go up to the 20%, which I agree with. But I mean, it kind of feels like the thrust of the rule is now to place 20% affordable housing in PDR zones, and that seems a lot like what's been happening in the city over the past several years, where you significantly upzone these areas that are light industrial. And granted, the IZ was 8 to 12%. You're proposing 20. It still has led to a lot of gentrification in those areas wherever it's been done. And I feel like with the restriction on density when it comes to areas that are low density residential, that's going to exclude a lot of areas that could use some of this expanded IZ, and really kind of fits the purpose of what the mayor proposed, which was to build more affordable housing in areas that that really need it, high cost areas, and a lot of those are like low density residential. And so if you're excluding this rulemaking or from those areas, and that kind of takes it out of what the mayor was talking about. And in the same in the same breath, you're like placing this focus on PDR zones. I don't know how many PDR zones are in areas that that have high incomes and that really need affordable housing. So that's my commentary. I like the idea, and on its face it seems cool, but those couple issues give me some pause. And I hope that over time and as you guys work on this rule, that some of my concerns are addressed. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next, we have Melissa Bondi with Enterprise Community Partners.
Hi there, can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Fantastic. I am proving I can work in multiple platforms for video conferencing. This is a good day. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Melissa Bondi. I'm the Mid-Atlantic State and Local Policy Director for Enterprise Community Partners, and I'm speaking on behalf of the organization here located in the District of Columbia on behalf of the Mid-Atlantic Market Team. For more than 35 years, Enterprise has been proud to deliver capital, to develop programs, and to advocate for policies that create and preserve well-designed homes that people can afford in inclusive and connected communities. As an organization, we are committed to deconstructing the legacy of racial inequity that has manifested in housing policies for generations in all the markets we serve. As was mentioned earlier by others in testimony, Enterprise is a member of the Housing Priorities Coalition, and we are a co-signer to the letter first introduced by Ms. Court in earlier testimony. I'm here today to lend Enterprise's voice in support of the Office of Planning's interest to expand inclusionary zoning, and to offer our organization's interest and real-world experience as a developer, a financer, and a policy and technical assistance leader within the District of Columbia to optimize this as a potential solution on top of the other portfolio of tools already in place. We have participated in the most recent comprehensive plan amendment process since its launch. We supported the 2019 changes to the framework elements during that process fundamentally because of their elevation of the prioritization of housing affordability, production, anti-displacement, and far more intentional, explicit planning to undo historic racial inequities in housing policy, access to opportunity, and household stability and wealth creation. We knew then, as we know now, that additional tools will be needed to increase the portfolio and applicability of housing affordability to help meet these necessary and ambitious goals. The expanded IZ concept as already proposed is a very good starting place for this discussion. Because so many of the points that Enterprise included in its written testimony have already been well addressed and on the record by prior speakers in today's roundtable, namely, we would like to associate ourselves with Ms. Court, Mr. McEnany, and Mr. Kent. I'm going to focus my oral remarks here on the questions that were raised by the Office of Planning in the earliest slides of this roundtable. First question is, my notes show, are requirements too low or too high? We would like to see past projects meeting the criteria for proposed expanded IZ under the Office of Planning's memo to be run through models to see what outcomes would have occurred if this proposal as written had been in place at the time of those map amendments. We know this exercise would not predict future outcomes per se, but it would certainly help us to understand the level of variability that's possible in real-world scenarios and give us a better understanding of the tolerances and any patterns for large projects versus small projects, stick-built versus concrete, and some of the other alternatives that may be at issue. Enterprise is certainly open to seeing scenarios that would increase the maximum potential IZ contribution threshold above 20%, pending pro forma review on the economics of a project that may be subject to a higher contribution. We would also support scenarios that provide for deeper levels of affordability with commensurate smaller offsets of FAR contributions in order to meet that, that additional cost and level of effort for benefit. We would love to be able to see any new policies that can be brought to bear to help us expand the depth of affordability across the city and in high-cost communities. To question number 2, running scenarios on past amendment projects, we think would also help us to evaluate the pros and cons of applying an IZ requirement on total residential density versus the delta of increased density. We have been involved in some policies that are not quite the same as this one, but where we have seen successful disaggregation of looking only at the delta of imputed new land capture value and how to displace that versus doing something from FAR Unit 1, going from 0 all the way up to the maximum density. So there are ways to do it where it could be advantageous and equitable, but we would need to see more information to be able to have a stronger opinion. To question 3, Enterprise is certainly open to looking to targeting this concept to high-cost areas because of what we believe could be the real benefits toward those big picture comprehensive plan goals on racial equity and access to opportunity. But we also know that there is a tremendous need for substantial new committed affordable housing throughout the city. And we would not want to preclude looking at all locations that could meet our comprehensive goals. Even this afternoon, I heard from a few other speakers today that have suggested ways to expand the applicability of expanded IZ, and we would love to have the opportunity to consider some of those alternatives as well before rendering a final opinion. Similarly to your question 4, our default assumption is to consider first the broadest possible application of any thoughtful new approach in public policy, narrowing it only upon recognition or evidence of economic or other relevant analysis that would justify exemptions. So for us, we would want to start with a broad brush and then narrow rather than starting with a narrow or conservative brush and hoping to expand it later. We don't have a current opinion on building height issues, but we agree the question is important, and we wonder whether or not a review of prior map amendment projects through the concept proposal could also look at the issues of building envelope, height, lot coverage, and things of that nature to see whether or not an expansion of the available building envelope could be part of the review in a way that might help us get to better outcomes. Finally, on the question of applicability of small versus large properties, we absolutely agree this is an important question, as is the impact on mission-minded developers who may need new lanes of development proposals that are more predictable than our current PUD process. So they may not be larger or smaller in terms of their building envelope, but they may be in terms of their balance sheets and their ability to access capital in order to provide the maximum amount of committed affordability, taking advantage of all the tools the district offers in order to help meet our bigger picture affordable housing goals. Finally, if this has been said before, we encourage the Office of Planning to consider the matter of right option in addition to expanded IZ, and to keep in mind the engine of affordable housing production being provided by mission-minded developers. As a practical matter, there are elements of expanded IZ that may or may not lead to unlocking all of the financial capital tools that they rely upon in order to meet mission and to provide committed affordable housing. So being able to look at as many lanes of approval toward committed affordable housing across the district or enterprise would be a benefit. I thank you so much for your time and attention and look forward to being able to work with the Office of Planning and other stakeholders here to find the best possible combination for expanding IZ. Thank you.
Melissa, thank you so much. Next, we have Coy McKinney testifying.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Hi, my name is Coy McKinney, and I'm a member of the resident group Southwest DC Action based in Southwest DC. I believe IZ Plus is a step in the right direction, but due to the depth of the affordable housing crisis, a step that does not go far enough. Dr. Ibram Kendi, author of How to Be an Anti-Racist, writes, every policy in every institution, in every community, in every nation is producing or sustaining either racial inequity or equity between racial groups. The results for DC are in, and Black and brown Washingtonians have received the short end of the stick, with tens of thousands of them being displaced and struggling to find housing due to increasing median rents. Clearly, the housing policies DC has enacted are promoting racial inequity and must be changed. As a Southwest resident, I've been able to see the failure of current policies firsthand. Southwest, an area that was the first site of urban renewal, also known as Negro removal by James Baldwin, has tried to move on from its mistakes by striving to be an exemplary model of equity and inclusion through the Southwest Neighborhood Plan. But these aspirations have not materialized due to a mix of inequitable laws and racial capitalism in general. Southwest has added over 10 new apartment/condo buildings in the time that I've lived here since 2009, and we've only seen a 21st century version of urban renewal. When testifying at a zoning commission hearing back in 2018, even Chairman Hood said the more housing you see, the more the prices go up. This has been true in Southwest as well. Despite an onslaught of units, the median income has increased 117%, white population has more than doubled, Black population has decreased 37%, median rent is now over $2,000 a month, which requires a salary of $80,000 a year to not be housing cost burden, an amount that is nearly double what the median Black household makes. If the city and all these companies truly believe that Black lives matter, then access to housing must also matter, and we must take bold action in raising the requirement of affordable housing units. Finally, IZ has only produced 92 three-bedroom units. As a person who is in the process of expanding my family, my wife's due date is actually today. I'm worried about my ability to stay in my neighborhood should we decide to have another child, let alone if the salary that I make, which is a teacher salary, would allow me to afford a three-bedroom home. For the sake of justice and allowing citizens to grow with the city equitably, we must take bold action, and I encourage the Office of Planning to raise the affordable housing unit requirement.
Thank you so much, Coy, and that concludes all of our registered individuals and organizations testifying today.
Thank you, Juliana, and thank you everyone for speaking. This was really very insightful. We've heard quite a lot of ideas to look into and to digest. And that's what we will be doing. We'll be digesting the information that we've received, the comments, and the requests for additional action. Other thing I want to mention is that some of the ideas that we heard today are outside the realm of enhanced IZ, but certainly are IZ policy changes that would probably be a separate case. So looking at issues such as applying IZ in general to areas that have always been exempt. That'll be a separate case, but it is something we will be looking at. I think we've heard quite a bit of interesting ideas to go through. We're going to spend the rest of July and August formulating these ideas and thinking through some recommended text and amendments to take to the Zoning Commission. We'll be taking that in early fall, and then there'll be another series of more standard public hearings in front of the Zoning Commission itself. And as Art Rogers said earlier, the financial model will be available, and you'll see the work we've gone through. So I just want to thank everybody for participating and coming. I also want to take the opportunity to remind everybody, if they haven't already, to fill out your census. It's never too late, and everybody's laughing because we were told to plug that census at every possible chance, and then to also keep the pressure on for getting our comp plan approved, because that is really critical to all of our work going forward, and all of the work towards equity and densification and housing is really critical that we get that comp plan taken to council and get it approved as well. So with that, Jonathan, Art, do you guys have anything else you want to add, or Andrew, if you're still there? Okay.
Nothing on my end.
All right, Juliana, thank you for hosting everybody in and out of the hearing room virtually. And with that, I think that'll be it for the evening. Thank you.